Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Naveen Punjabi. I lead strategic partnerships for data and analytics at Google Cloud. Informatica is one of the key partners that we work with. In fact, at Informatica World last year, we unveiled our partnership. And in today's session, we're going to talk a lot about how Google Cloud and Informatica and what we are doing together to make it easier for your customers to manage, migrate, and discover data in their big data environments. But before we get there, I think it's very important for us to recognize the challenges that lie ahead of us. Uh, One of the things that we all know that enterprises are generating a lot more data than ever before, yet it has been extremely difficult for them to analyze all of this data at scale. And one of the key fundamental reasons why this is, we believe is the case is um, the organizations are constrained by the complexity of the analytical environment that they have in place today. So we at Google are extremely focused to solve this pain point. But it's not just limited to their analytical systems. What we see is it's even relevant for their storage and database environments. As more and more data is coming in, customers need to manage their database environments and storage systems at scale. Scaling out of these systems is adding a lot to their administrative costs, as well as when they scale out, they tend to they might have to sacrifice on some of the strong consistency requirements that they might have in place. So, as I said, especially in our data and analytics and the storage products, you'll see a lot more focus of Google Cloud to make it as easy as possible for you to be able to do storage of data, analytics at scale very, very easily. And what that essentially means is four key pillars. For us, we want our customers to be able to focus a lot more on business insights than to worry about the underlying infrastructure that is needed for the storage systems or for analytical systems. A very good example of that is our petabyte scale data warehouse, BigQuery. If you go to the BigQuery UI today, you'll see on the left-hand side, it's all about moving the data into BigQuery. There is a console that you have where you can write SQL queries, and there's a red button which says run the query. You do not have to think about what use case do you need to use BigQuery for. You do not have to plan for capacity. You don't have to think about burst scenarios. You don't have to provision anything. It's all ready to go. In fact, in existing systems, customers have to think about not only provisioning and managing, they also have to monitor these systems over time to fine-tune it, and it's a lot of work. So we solved that. The second key pillar of our approach is that we want our systems to be tightly integrated with each other. Another good example of that is how we have multiple connectors available that make it data portability easy between our databases. BigQuery, for example, again, supports a notion of federated queries. If your data is in GCS, if your data is in Bigtable, you can query this data from the same SQL environment as if your data just resides in BigQuery. The third key pillar is we want our systems to be intelligent, smart. In the morning today, in the keynote, you heard about machine learning capabilities now coming inside BigQuery. And we are headed in that direction, and we'll continue investing in that. And the fourth of the notion is keeping it open as possible. You'll see that with a lot of our database products. We try to maintain as much compatibility as possible with the SQL environments and the open source systems out there. I think this slide does a good job in terms of giving an overview of the portfolio of storage and database options that you have available on Google Cloud. If you are looking at storing unstructured data on Google, Google Cloud Storage is the answer for you. If you are looking at storing unstructured data, but you need a mobile SDK, Firebase is a good solution for you to take a look at. If you're thinking about relational systems and relational databases, Cloud SQL brings you compatibility with MySQL and PostgreSQL. If you're looking for, hey, I have my database scaling needs, I'm putting a lot more data in my environment, and I need a scale-out database that provides global availability, Spanner gives you that answer. If you have non-relational data that needs to be stored in a NoSQL-like environment, primarily for your web and mobile applications, Data Store gives you that flexibility. If you are looking for a key value based cache operation, cache database, then memory store gives you that option. So we have most of those aspects covered. If you're running analytics on Google Cloud and you want to maintain it at petabyte scale, you have BigQuery. But you're looking for an analytical database that gives you low latency and high write throughput, Bigtable is the right option for you. So you have all of these options available. And similarly, on the analytics side, we have for streaming ingestion, PubSub available for you to ingest event data, all of that into Google Cloud. For data processing, you have Cloud Data Flow, as well as Dataproc, which is our managed Hadoop and Spark service. And once you land the data into BigQuery, it's ready for analytics, as I said. And then when you're thinking about how do I do more advanced machine learning-like use cases, you have TensorFlow as an option. You have Cloud Machine Learning, Cloud AutoML, and our machine learning APIs that make it easy for you to be able to leverage your data in BigQuery and take it further. But you can leverage all of these amazing capabilities only if you have your data in Google Cloud. So that's where our partnership with Informatica comes in. Google Cloud has provided you, so to say, rudimentary tooling around how you can move some of the data into GCS. And I'll quickly cover that. But I think it leaves a lot of gaps, and which is why we are partnering with Informatica here. So quickly, if you have your data already available in a public cloud object store like S3, you can use our transfer service. It's a service available for you to be able to migrate your data into GCS buckets. Very simple. If you have your data available in a co-location or on-prem with very high bandwidth high bandwidth network, then you have a command line utility called GSutil that allows you to move the data in a parallelized operation much more effectively. But if you have your data on-prem, unstructured, and you want to move it to Google Cloud, and you don't have the bandwidth option, we do have an appliance that you can bring in, move all of your data, ship it, and we'll make it available in GCS buckets for you. But again, as I said, there are a lot of white spaces that are open here. How do you move structured data effectively into Google Cloud? How do you manage hybrid scenarios? But even before moving your data, how do you know what is the right data to move into Google Cloud? And that's where Informatica helps us out. So that said, I'm going to now yield the stage and pass the floor to Prateek from Informatica.
Can you hear me OK? All right. So hello, everyone. My name is Prateek Parekh. I lead the product management team at Informatica, responsible for some of the core components of the platform, as well as responsible for the Google partnership. So what I'll be covering today is, Navin talked about some of the challenges. I'm going to cover how Informatica is addressing some of that, how we are helping our customer base to actually transform, modernize, and re-architect or implement the newer architecture, data architectures in the cloud or in hybrid world. Most of you are, I'm assuming, familiar with Informatica, but just a recap, Informatica has been around for 25 years. We have been, and right from day one, our core premises has been with data. And as you all know, data is, at this point, is exploding like anything, right? The fragmentation is out there. Data is everywhere, and the ability and to bring and get and harness the data and to get some meaningful insight is what Informatica is all about. We have over 9,000 customers. We are present in around 28 different countries, and I think we need to be on this slide. OK. We are 9,000 plus customers, 26 countries, over 200 million, close to 200 million in R&D investment, which actually makes up one of the largest percentage of R&D investment from a revenue to R&D investments point of view. So as you can see, a lot of innovation going on, and something that I'll be covering today. So a quick overview of Informatica, the segments that we play in. We play into like 6 markets, all related to data, starting with the integration, from integration to big data management, as the big data management is not just about the structured data, unstructured data, and the processing at very high volume. with very high velocity of data and handling the different patterns of data. So that's big data management. Data quality is all about cleaning the data before you can you need a clean data before you can analyze that and have an insight. So data quality is paramount to, when you are implementing an analytics architecture. Master data management is all about once the data is there, how do you actually get your single view of the customer, how do you get the single view of products, and how do you can implement the reference implementation, reference record implementation, and so on. Data catalog is something that we introduced a year ago, but it's becoming the operating system of data, if you will, and I'll tell you why. I think most of you should have a data catalog strategy, a governance strategy, and I have a demo that I'll share with you as to how it can help you, not just from a governance standpoint, but also from when you are building this next generation architecture to figure out where the data lives and how it actually helps you to discover the data before you can actually take up any of the migration initiatives. And finally, data security is again something very new in the segment, but Informatica, while you have the perimeter security, your firewalls, most of the breaches, as you know, happens actually at the data. And having a data security strategy is a very key foundation for your data architectures. So this is what Informatica does, and the interesting thing is Informatica leads in all of these market categories that's out there. Last and not the least, about this particular 6 categories that I talked about is the cloud. So most of the Informatica products, when we started around 25 years ago, obviously it was an on-premise installation. More and more, almost all of these product categories and the segments that I talked about on the data side has moved over to cloud, and that is under the umbrella of integration platform as a service. That's something that Gartner treats it as a newer cloud-based data integration and the data management category, and we are leading that segment as well. So let's look at the journey to cloud and the use cases that I'll be focusing on today. So as we look at what customers are doing and what most of the customers are challenged with right now, they are trying to implement one of these 5 patterns or combination of these 5 patterns. Number 1 is data warehousing. They are trying to actually extend their existing footprint in on-prem, or either doing a lift and shift of on-prem data warehouses onto the cloud, or implementing a hybrid strategy. So cloud data warehousing is definitely one of the key patterns that we are seeing. We are seeing a good adoption of customers moving on Google BigQuery, and that's where the focus of this presentation is going to be. The second thing we are seeing is the application integration use case. Clearly, as you implement new and new business processes in your organization, most of your new business processes are a SaaS-based application. And if you look at it, most of it is like if you're implementing CRM, you have Salesforce or equivalent. If you have human resource management, you're implementing Workday or SuccessFactors. You have, if you are going into a service-based implementation, you have ServiceNow and so on. So your applications and your processes are all fragmented in the cloud with a combination of what you have on-prem and what you have invested over the years in on-prem. And these two things have to come together, which is a category of cloud application integration and a foundation of one of the big use cases that customers are trying to solve. The most interesting thing that we see happening is there is a convergence of the application integration and the data integration. The market is not now fragmented into 2 different silos, and most of the COE, Center of Excellences, are also coming together because data is the underlying common thread between the app integration as well as the data integration. And that's important that you have an architecture, you have you are thinking through in terms of your solution that actually cuts across both the DI as well as the app integrations things. Obviously, database migration is a subset, is more similar to data warehouse, but more and more customers are looking into implementing a cloud-based databases, and there is a migration. Obviously, cost is a big driver for that, as well as the agility. So customers are moving more and more databases as far as possible into the cloud. Cloud data lake is an emerging pattern. The difference between the data lake and the data warehouse is all about landing everything first in a lake, and then curating that particular data for certain use cases like analytics or machine learning and so on. And the key difference between the data warehouse and data lake is that you're dealing, when it comes to data lake, it's not just the volume of data and the type of data you're moving, but it's also the patterns of data. It's not just structured data. You're looking at structured data, semi-structured data, as well as unstructured data. And all of that is coming over into the cloud in a lake, and then you want to process it. So you are doing more of an ELT. You are extracting, you are loading, and then you are transforming the data to derive the analytics around it. And finally is the hybrid, because hybrid is not going to go away. For most larger enterprises, they have a lot of assets in the cloud, in on-prem, they have a lot of things in cloud, and both of this has to be brought together in a single unified architecture that can live and that can actually evolve as the customer's transformation journey is taking place. So in this presentation, I'm going to focus on these three key use cases. More or less are related. But some of the principles that I'll be talking about in the case in the context of data warehouse also applies for data lake as well as for database migrations. So let's take a typical enterprise. Most of the enterprise we talk to are larger customers, but even this applies to mid-sized companies and also SMBs. All of them have a different scale problem, but the problem is well articulated here, that they have lots and lots of databases and schemas. They have terabytes, gigabytes is nobody talks about gigabytes anymore, right? So it's like terabytes of data in the organization, hundreds of applications supporting critical business processes. And the key questions that they are all grappling with is, as they move and as they take this cloud-first strategy or cloud journey, how do they move all this asset that lies on-prem into the cloud? What is the most practical approach to take you there? I break it down into these three high-level approach or patterns. Number one is the current state for data warehouse. Most of that is lying in on-prem. It is actually loading data from various different systems and databases, and then you are applying analytics on top of that. If the approach that we are taking here is how do you actually show value in some of the cloud-based data warehouses such as BigQuery? The first thing is you need to discover which application or which system, which databases you are going to actually move first. And that's one of the biggest struggle that most customers have, as to how do I even figure out of these thousands of schemas and databases I have, what is going to actually drive and show business the value, show executives the value of that particular migration. So discovery is a critical step in what we believe that most customers should start with. They need to have a very well-defined strategy as to what data assets they are going to move into the cloud. And finally, once they have shown the proof of value, it all comes about now how do I operationalize it and how I can do a mass-scale migrations and shift from on-prem into the cloud. And we'll take a look at some of the things in this presentation. So let's start with the discovery. From an Informatica perspective, the product that plays a huge role on the discovery side is Enterprise Data Catalog, as I was mentioning earlier. Enterprise Data Catalog has certain salient characteristics. First and foremost, because it connects to almost all the data across your organization, both in the cloud as well as on-prem, it has the ability to give you a very good visual view of where your data belongs to, right? And that allows you to actually discover the data set. But looking at the data and looking at the data assets is not just enough. You need to figure out what is my impact. You need to know the impact analysis before you take up a migration initiative. You need to have a lineage graph figured out to figure out if I'm moving an Oracle database, what other applications are depending on that Oracle database before I can take it over to Google BigQuery. And that is one key thing that EDC, Enterprise Data Catalog, helps you to arrive. It has an AI and ML built in to actually derive all those relationships and all those semantic inferences and recommendations that allows you to actually, helps you to actually take this journey. So let's take a look at this demo first. So I'm in Enterprise Data Catalog UI. And what we like to say is it's Google of the enterprise, right? Now, you are all familiar with Google Search that allows you to search anything. What if you have the same search capability and gets you to view data within the enterprise? Your enterprise data is as complex as what your internet world is. And you need a good search capability to actually find out where your data is. So let me start with something like I want to look at customer. My first project that I want to show proof of value is I want to move a CRM system. What would it mean? What would it look like if I have to move a CRM system into the cloud, into a different database? So here I'm looking at the customer. I'm just making a search on customer. OK, I'm timed out. So while this is coming up, the internet is very slow, and I tried this before. It takes some time before this logging goes through. So what I'm going to show is you do a search on customer. It is going to list all the various CRM customer-centric data stores that exist in an enterprise. There are over 5,000 plus data assets that it is scanning. And it is telling, and it's finding out the set of customer objects that are related to a CRM. That is good enough. But how do I know out of that 10,000 customer-related objects that I'm getting, which one is relevant? So I have the context of what I call as a trusted sources, and I can find out the trusted customer objects out of that. From there, I'm able to pick the right set, and I can figure out the relationships and the lineage graphs about how the customer is related to everything. So let's see if it comes in. So here I got around 627 objects that are tied to customer. Out of over, as I said, over 5,000 plus data stores that exist in this particular enterprise. This is good enough, but I need to figure out whether I should look into all of this, or I have this tagging here, which actually it is inferring based on what customers are using, what systems are using, and it's giving me a certified list of customer objects. What I could find here is it got reduced to around 4. And you can see that I can see a customer master. So now maybe this is interesting. Maybe this is an object that I want to, this is the data schema that I want to move over to Google BigQuery. So I'm taking a look at it, and it gives me a good overview. It gives me a business glossary. This is something that even a business user should be able to look at. So from a CRM analyst or a CRM admin should be able to find out what it means to them. And it gives me a good view of all the columns that exist in this particular schema, in this particular database table. It gives me the relationship graph as to who is using it and what data domains exist. So if I look at the data domains, it's giving me all the various data domains, and this looks like a very relevant information of what I wanted to do in terms of migrating my CRM system into the cloud. I can see the users. Looks like all of these are the right users of this particular applications, and the reports that are based on this particular data store. So around three plus reports are being used here. And I'll go into the lineage graph, which is the most interesting because this allows me to take a look at to do an impact analysis. So if I am touching this particular database schema, which other systems will have an impact on this? So as you can see, this is coming from Oracle CRM, is being then nurtured in Hive, and then is being used for the reporting purposes. So I go into the Oracle schema. I go into the Oracle database, and it's telling me there are around 4 tables here, 1 database, 1 schema, and around 3 composite domains. Looks like this is a great candidate for me to actually move and show the value of the migration from on-prem into the cloud. So let's go back to the presentation. So behind the scenes, what EDC does is it has what we call as the scanners, and the ability to scan, irrespective of where the sources are, is cloud sources, on-prem sources, application sources, locked systems. EDC practically has scanners for each and every system out there that has or that possesses data. And that's how it actually curates all that into the big data store underneath to give you that view that I just showed, and can actually provide you that relationship graph, the lineage graph, that will be helpful to understand where my data is and what my hybrid architecture looks like. Once we have that, you can now figure out that I just picked the database table, the customer master, and now it is easy for me to, with a very low risk and with high confidence, to actually target that particular data store and migrate that over onto the cloud. So here, I will use the other service of Informatica Cloud, which is the data integration tool. Now, Informatica data integration capabilities, this is a cloud-based service. If you are a Power Center customer, if you are a big data management customer, it's the same thing. You can use any of these tools and leverage all your investments in Power Center or in big data management or cloud, and actually do the transformation of that particular data, do the transformation and do the bulk load into the Google BigQuery. The key differentiations are that this is a cloud-based environment. From Informatica perspective, now that you have taken a cloud journey, we highly recommend you to actually take look into a cloud-based integration solution. And Informatica, as we talked about, has a pretty broad set of services available in the cloud. Data integration is one of them. It is a totally cloud-based design environment with all the same transformations that you are used to if you are using Power Center, if you use Power Center. Almost all the transformations are available in the cloud, including data quality and data security, mass ingestion to actually move data at bulk, at high volume, at high scale, support of advanced patterns such as change data capture. You can reuse most of your Power Center mappings. If this thing was loading into an Oracle data store, and now you want to load it into BigQuery, you will be able to actually just switch, change the target over to Google BigQuery, and most of your mapping should work. Remember, there are some nuances when you change a system like Teradata or Netezza or Oracle over to Google BigQuery. The nuances of the systems do come into play, but most of your investment in Power Center can be harnessed and can be reused while you are migrating the data over to cloud, and a very scalable solution. One of the big differentiator of Informatica is the rich connectivity layer that Informatica provides. So irrespective of where your data is, whether on-prem or in cloud, systems like SAP or Oracle E-Business Suite, Workday, SuccessFactors, all of those systems are covered, and you can actually bring a wide variety of data, irrespective of the patterns of data, whether it's structured data, unstructured data. You can actually ingest that data over into BigQuery. And at this point, I would like Rajat to actually go over and show you Informatica Cloud user interface and also some of the capabilities that we have on the BigQuery connector side.
Is the mic working? Okay.
Yeah, talk.
So I hope you are having a good time in Google Next. A brief introduction about myself. I am the product manager in Informatica, and I'm the one who is handling the Google ecosystem from Informatica side. So now we have done the hard stuff, identifying the customer asset using our enterprise data catalog. I'm going to do the simple stuff, the simple demo, to move that particular table from Oracle or SQL Server to Google BigQuery. So this is the login screen for our Informatica Cloud Service platform. I have provided my username and login. So once I log in, I'll be landing into this page. So here you can see all the services what we support from our cloud platform. We have API Manager, we have API Portal. Here you can actually integrate your various cloud application and create your business rules and workflow. We have integration of hub. For this particular demo, we will be using a data integration. So that is a service what we are going to use. And this one is an important service, which is PC to cloud conversion. So I think Prateek touched upon that. If you are existing Power Center customer, you can migrate your Power Center mappings to the new cloud platform using this utility. So it will give you a detailed report that how many mappings can be reused, what data types, let's say if you are moving from Netezza to BigQuery, what kind of data types are compatible, what functions are compatible, and it will also suggest that, let's say, some of the functions or data types which are not present in BigQuery, what are the alternatives you can map your existing ports to. So once you go inside the data integration service, we will be seeing this, or this will be the landing page. You will see how many connections you already have. This is the assets, number of assets, like the mapping task, what you have already created. So first of all, what we need to do is we need to go to the connection and make sure that we have a valid connection to Google BigQuery. So I'll open a already created connection. One thing is there, if you don't find your connection over here, you can add the connections. Right now you are not seeing the 200 plus connectors what we have. What you need to do is you have to contact our supports, which is Informatica Cloud Support, and they will provision any of these 200 plus connectors which you require for your data migration activities. So we have Redshift, we have for Azure, we have for Anaplane, all the cloud apps plus on-prem databases like SQL Server, and we are also going to add support for DashDB, Postgres. So all the on-prem databases, you can get the connectors by subscribing it or writing it to our support team. So let's go back to our connection. I'll just open one of the Google BigQuery connection and I will explain to you what all parameters we need to provide. So first of all, we have to identify the server where our secure agent is. Now secure agent is nothing but a stripped down version of our Power Center execution engine. This is where the whole data mapping and all the processing happens. You have to install, it can be installed in a cluster of Windows or Linux. You have to identify on which secure agent group you want to run this mapping. So as you can see in the drop down, I have Informatica cloud hosted agent. So this secure agent can be hosted on our Informatica cloud, as well as the secure agent can be downloaded and installed in your own premise. So I'll be using a secure agent which is running into xCloud. Then I will be using service account ID. So that is the authentication method what we use to connect to Google BigQuery. So service account ID, service account key. We have to specify the project where your target tables are, and we have to also provide a Google Cloud Storage path over here. Now once I am inside the demo, I will explain to you why this is relevant. Here, if you are not giving this path also, the connections will be successful, but you will find an error later part when you are running the mapping. Connection mode. So this is an important thing, and this is a unique thing what our connector supports. We have simple, hybrid, and complex mode. The simple mode is basically when you are running mapping through a relational thing where you have flat data types. Complex and hybrid is something when you are dealing with the nested data type. So Google BigQuery has record and repeated. So if you are dealing with that, then you have to use hybrid or complex mode. So there we preserve the nested structure, as well as we flatten out also the nested structure if you are moving data from, let's say, BigQuery to Oracle. So from hierarchical to relational. So when you're working with that, then we should use other mode. Once we are done with this connection property, we test it. The connection was successful. So I'll go back to the data integration console and I'll open an already created mapping. So I have a mapping created which is basically taking out customer and location detail from SQL Server, and this is mapping to the use case which we have seen earlier, which is some of our customers are actually expanding their data warehouse. So they are retaining their legacy database, let's say on SQL Server, but the new things or the new aggregation or new tables they are creating in Google BigQuery. So what I'm doing over here is I am taking the customer details mapping it with the, or joining it with a location, and I'm loading to Google BigQuery the number of customers based on location. So I'm using joiner and aggregator transformation over there. But as you can see over here, we have many more transformation which you can use to create your business rule on this mapping. Once I select the target, there are certain properties which is specific to BigQuery that you need to configure. This is the connection mode and connection which I have already created. Let's go to the one more thing. So operations. So we support insert, update, and delete. This upsert is something which is very specific to Informatica. So BigQuery natively doesn't support upsert, but the connector, our connector, the native connector provides this functionality where we support upsert operation as well. Once we go to the advanced section, we have to just provide some more parameters. We can we support all the native configuration of Google BigQuery. We can write truncate, write append, write empty. We support both mode of data loading, streaming and bulk load. So I'm just trying to, yeah. So we support both bulk and streaming. Now when you are choosing the bulk mode, that is where the Google Cloud Storage path which you have given into your storage the connection property comes into the picture. So we stage it into Google Cloud Storage and then we move it to Google BigQuery. Streaming is directly loading to Google BigQuery. So once we have set all these parameters, what we need to do is we have to check whether the mapping is valid. So in this case it is valid, and I'll just execute it. So I'm running the mapping. Again, at the runtime also I have a flexibility to select the the secure agent where it is running. So I'll be again selecting it on this particular cloud. And yeah, so we have scheduled the job and the mapping is going to the run. Now by the time we are getting this job done, I would highly encourage you to go to Informatica site, and we have a free trial where you can actually test and do a hands-on thing on our Informatica cloud platform. So you will get a 30 days free trial. You can write to our Google Cloud Operations team to provision BigQuery connector for you. So you can try your own mappings and see the performance of this connector. So this connector is quite performant. We were able to scale more than 1 lakh or 100,000 rows per second and much before. So one more property what we use, I haven't shown it in the interest of time, is we support partitioning, multi-threading. So those are the property, and we can go up to 50 threads in parallel. So that is something which we have deployed in our customer premises and we have tested. Yes, so it's success, and we have inserted 25 records from SQL Server to Google BigQuery. So switching back to Prateek, I think you.
Thanks, Rajat. Thanks, Rajat. So what I want to cover in the last 5 minutes is to recap with what Informatica, we just saw some glimpses of like a real small demo of what Informatica Cloud is capable of. I'll quickly run over a high-level overview of Informatica Cloud Services. So this actually view describes what Informatica Cloud is all about. Support for any integration pattern. So as I said in the beginning of the session, that there is a convergence of various integration patterns coming together. Data integration, application integration, unstructured data integration, big data processing, file ingestions, semi-structured parsing, and all of that. So one of the big premise of Informatica is to provide you a single unified platform that can actually handle a multiple integration pattern. The second thing we see, and more, most of the enterprises are probably already seeing it, and that's what I'm reflecting here, is that you need to provide integration. While integration developer and integration COEs have the right powerful tools to actually do this type of data architectures, there's also a need to actually move that integration closer to business. So there is a need for citizen integrator, as we call it, a business user who should be able to do rudimentary integration tasks. So our goal is to provide a platform that actually is catered for multiple personas. So we cater to integration developer, but we also cater to the citizen integrator and the line of business users. The third and the big thing is, as we talked about, is any data. Irrespective of where the data sits, irrespective of what form the data is, and in what velocity it is moving, we need to handle that data. And that's the concept. And it is whether it's on-prem, whether it's in cloud, whether it's behind the firewall, in a closed system like SAP, or whether it's in a cloud-based system like Workday, you need to have you need to access that data. So ability to have those connectors, out-of-box connectors that are metadata rich and highly performant, as what Rajesh showed for BigQuery, is something that we actually invest quite a bit of. And those 200 plus connectors, but our plus open technology by which we can connect to thousands of different data systems. Finally, all of this running under a common unified metadata layer. As I said earlier, metadata is becoming a new nerve center of your data domain. And ability to ingest that metadata and to provide that unified view of a metadata like what we saw in enterprise data catalog is very, very critical as you actually establish this next generation data architecture. So that is built in underneath the platform. And finally, all this, because you are running with a cloud scale and with the agility that you are working with and the speed at which you are moving, you need to have an environment that is really, really scalable, secure, and trustworthy. And Informatica underlying the platform is a microservice-based, highly scalable runtime that actually allows you to do that, and is trustworthy because it can actually support most of the compliance standards that you need to now worry about as you move your data into the cloud. From a topology standpoint, both cloud-to-cloud integrations as well as cloud-to on-prem integrations are supported, as you can see here. The component that actually allows you to access an on-prem data source is the secure agent, is an execution environment. And why this architecture is also very scalable is because the secure agents, you can actually, it sits closer to the data, wherever the data is. And it's important because it allows you to keep the secure agent closer to the data gravity. And because it's a single component, a smaller component that actually sits closer to the data, you can actually have a horizontal scale out of the secure agents, which actually helps you to on the scaling side as well. We talked about the any data part. The thing that I didn't cover is the machine data, the data lake. But similar to what we saw in BigQuery, we also have the connectors available to write into data lakes directly into the blob storages and the storage areas, and that's where the data lake comes into play. We covered the microservices-based platform, which is allowing you to scale as you scale your deployment, and it uses the component that is most relevant for you. So if you are only using data integration but not the app integration, you will only be consuming that microservices, so your footprint is always close to what you want. Compliance and security. So people who are moving such sensitive data into the cloud, you want to make sure that is highly compliant and secure. So today, Informatica Cloud is HIPAA compliant, as well as SOC 2 and PCI and all the relevant compliances. It's gone through all the security. We covered the intelligence part underneath the platform. And finally, what I want to cover is the support for Google platform. So Naveen showed a slide that talked about all the various Google data assets. And as you can see from this slide, almost all the data assets are supported by Informatica today. And we are working on some of the other components that are currently not marked as supported. So this actually gives you a view as, so if you, I spend most of my time talking about BigQuery, but the same architecture and the same design principle applies if you were to move data onto Google Spanner, for example, or you know, your database is running on Google on a bare metal. This slide actually summarizes the various phases that we talked about today. we spend a lot of time on the discovery. That is critical because your data is, as we said, across the board. Discovery is very, very critical. But from discovery, your next step comes is ingestion. You saw that how we can ingest the data. Whether you are implementing ETL or ELT, both of those scenarios are supported. You can actually transform while you are moving the data, or you can transform post you have moved the data. You need a good profiling tool to understand what your data characteristics is. So the Informatica Cloud Services have the profiling capabilities built in to support that. Cleaning the data, data quality is something that is, as we talked about, is very, very critical. So once you land the data into your staging environment or your storage environment, you would then actually clean and you do the further transformation before it is actually prepped for your analytics. A piece that we didn't cover is how do we do big data processing. So if your data is of massive scale and you have loaded both the structured data as well as the unstructured data, Informatica has a big data management component. We call it a big data management service that allows you to actually process data in high volume and high scale. I would go into a view which is so big data management actually today is a polyglot engine. What it does is it's fairly suitable for ELT type of use cases where you have loaded the data and then you are processing the data. And we allow the ability to actually use any of the container underneath. Some of those are supported by Informatica. Some are open source and open standards such as Spark processing. So Informatica mappings that you have developed on the top, you can actually generate it and natively it executes into the Spark job and process a high volume data. So this allows you to actually handle data at scale. And with that, I would like to actually open up for Q&A. I know I rushed a little bit, but I'm sure if there are any questions, we'll be happy to take at this point.